Yeah. Through brass and blowing smoke, Pinola brass and roll. Drop it envelope, big woods, here we go. I've been speeding, got a ticket, got a pond where I'm fishing with a hook full of crickets scoped in. I ain't missing, let's roll. Brass and blowing smoke, Pinola brass and roll. Drop it envelope, big woods, here we go. I've been speeding, got a ticket, got a pond where I'm fishing with a hook full of crickets scoped in. I ain't missing, let's roll.
I'm a Simpson kid coming straight from the sticks. Brashly Hicks off the chain, so my motor gon' miss. This ain't no catch and release, so I ain't throwing shit back. Keeping it loaded like the Mossberg, pumping the back. Yeah, my daddy keep them dogs loose. Stay off the leash, country life is our soul food. We gotta eat, it's a huddle at the huddle house. That's where we meet across the road from my parents' house. Shooting skeets, staying posted on a creek bank. Feeling the breeze, taking a trip, we did no slip down, ain't no dirty back road. In my Tahoe, busting circles in the middle of the road. Yelling, let's go, say what you want, but I'm gone. Yeah, 601 from the SIMP. Riding bad roads with my gas tank on E. Not doing this for me, but for the entire country. Holding it down for my family while gripping on good trees. Let's get it.
Brass and blowing smoke, Pinola brass and roll. Drop it envelope, big woods, here we go. I've been speeding, got a ticket, got a pond where I'm fishing with a hook full of crickets scoped in. I ain't missing, let's roll. Brass and blowing smoke, Pinola brass and roll. Drop it envelope, big woods, here we go. I've been speeding, got a ticket, got a pond where I'm fishing with a hook full of crickets scoped in. I ain't missing, let's roll.
I've been riding county roads since a baby in the back. Grew up on that old shit, the country where it's at. Badass heathen out the creek, Braxton on the map. I've been yelling seed up, hold up, raise a flag. Hey, good old boys, and wouldn't change if we could. Rest in peace, Waylon Jennings, represent where you stood. Youngest son of the South, and I've been smoking on wood. Blow my weed by the ounce, I got it straight out the mud. Chillin' bones in the ground, Braxton Hicks hold it down. I'm getting it while I'm driving 49 southbound. Making music for my county and they loving my sound. Mix it up, take a swig, cause my drink gon' be stout. Big Hive got the county bumping. They into something, dripping sauce like a bowl of dumplings. Let's get it jumping, high speed like I'm Jimmy Johnson. Ain't never stopping, lift it up on some Mickey Thompson. Let's get it rockin', let's roll.
Brass and blowing smoke, Pinola brass and roll. Drop it envelope, big woods, here we go. I've been speeding, got a ticket, got a pond where I'm fishing with a hook full of crickets scoped in. I ain't missing, let's
I've
roll.
been riding deep in the south. Throw a hook across the river, I be wearing them out. Shooting birds up by the sky and we be laying them down. I got a 12, not a neighbor calling saying we loud. Hey, church on Sunday, ribbons on my place. Dogs barking at the horses, one got kicked the other day. And I'm counting all my blessings for the way I'm raised. I've been stacking hay, just a simple boy staying in my lane. Hey, I be in the field shooting caps like a fool, like a bonfire. Keep it lit and fresh like Jimmy Choo. Birds standing still cause it's frozen and it's cool. Ayy, we be in the cut, passing time in the booth, ayy. Oh no, man, here we go again. Just some family and some friends eating crawfish heads. Hey, gathered in the shed, tear them up like a treadfold. Get the inside, I be outside instead gone. Braxton blowing smoke, Pinola Braxton Road. Driving info low, big woods, here we go. I've been speeding, got a ticket, got a pond where I'm fishing with a hook full of crickets scoped in. I ain't missing, let's roll. Let's roll, let's ride, let's roll. Whoa, 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 yeah.
Wow, good evening. Good evening, everyone. That is what a blessing already. $50 donation here for the love of the puppies from Mad Pax. Brother, I appreciate that. That is awesome. I'm sure that will go that will definitely go to good use, I promise. That is amazing. Look, we have a full house already. Chat is popping off. Like, you guys are amazing. Hope you enjoyed that video. So I asked those fellas, I called them and talked to them, and we kind of went back and forth about making music in the future and whatnot together. But I talked to them and asked them for permission to play their music in that video. So what I wanted you to see there was within that video, it wasn't necessarily a Christian song, but it gives you a window into kind of the world that I grew up in. I grew up down in the South, out in the woods where we would ride four-wheelers and horses and get stuck in the mud and have to get pulled out and get your truck stuck, and kids would band together on four-wheelers and four-wheel drives and just go out riding around mudding, and we just had a good old time. We would drink beer and get drunk and fight, and there'd be always somebody getting hurt, but there was never a point of killing everybody or anyone. Like, we weren't crazy. We just enjoyed life and enjoyed hanging out. It was looking back, it was a real blessing to be able to grow up in that type of environment, but there were times where I envied the city life, and now I kind of dwell among the city life. And it's overwhelming sometimes. People are at a fast pace. They're all moving around and they're on the go, and they're trying to get his place or that place. People are racing each other up and down the highways. It's amazing and funny, but terrible and exciting all at the same time. And it's just a way to show you guys the kind of life that I kind of come up in. Backwoods, old country fella. The interesting thing is, the man who raised me, who I call my father, my daddy, him and his wife and my mother, and that entire family, I don't know, it was just, they carried a lot of the traits of what you would think a biblical based family would follow without even trying necessarily. Like, they weren't out there reading the scripture to me every day. It was just simply do right. And by do right, it just means do the right thing at all times. The problem it becomes when there are times when you can't really do right. Because if you do right, then you get shunned and get, I don't know, looked at crazy. I think all of us in this community have been there, done that, or been through that at some point in their lives. And tonight we're going to kind of recap the journey of several people as they journey throughout this biblical timeline. And it's important really to understand who these people are and what they went through, to understand the times you're in and what you're going through. To make all the pressures of this world make sense, you really do need to know and understand all of Scripture. It says, seek ye first the truth, and all things, or something to that degree. I have to pull it up to quote it. But I know we're supposed to seek the truth. And I feel like, for me, that's something I've been doing my whole life. Seeking the truth. I want to know what is what. Where did I come from? And in that journey and search, you find all kind of amazing apertures of life. I met these young fellas when they were barely 20. That one of those fellas that was in that video you were just watching, he worked with me for a number of years. The funny thing is, I had went through like maybe 6 or 7 helpers before him. He just was one of those good old boys that you just kind of click, and you know he's always going to do right. And people are that way a lot of times until they're not. And that's because they get overwhelmed with all the pressures in life. And I think a lot of that pressure comes from not knowing who we are and where we come from and when in time we are. Without understanding those things, you don't know to even ask the question about it. It's like, why would anyone ever question the shape of the earth? I mean, it's a silly thing to question when you really think about it. But yet, somewhere along the way over the last 20 years or so, somebody questioned it. It led to all these conspiracy theories around it. A huge iceberg of information just collapsing like a avalanche of knowledge just thrown at us and given to us. And here, look at this. It's interesting how some of this stuff gets thrown right in your face and some of it just gets overlooked. Some of it gets so overlooked that if only you had the opportunity to see it, it'd have changed your whole worldview on things. And so we're shown what they want us to see. We're given what they want us to have. This isn't the only version of this book. There are many copies and many different versions that are earlier editions and even later editions than this. You just don't get them. You're never going to get them until something changes. And those changes are going to require extreme behaviors and consequences to go along with it. Before we get into all these extreme behaviors and consequences, let's welcome Miss Susie G, loves Jesus. We have Brother Trey in the house as well as Brother Mad Pax. Thank you again for that donation, Mad Pax. We have Wake in the Light. Good morning, everyone. Must be from the other side of town. Wake in the Light. Welcome. And Mad Pax says, I got the second arrow stuck in the like button. Thank you, Brother Mad Pax. Brother Trey says, sorry, misread your name. And then we have, let's see, who else do we have in the house with us? We have Miss Joyful One. We have Pepe Silva. Greg Y is with us this evening. Salty Sergio, brother. And then, of course, we have Virtual Reality Witness. Country Boys will survive. Absolutely. They will. People, the young people will ask me quite often, what is the best piece of advice you can give me? Like, if you could give me one piece of advice, what would it be? I'd say, learn to be self-sufficient. Because that's the thing we're not taught, is how to really take care of ourselves, how to handle these fruitless situations and these crazy abnormalities of life that we deal with on a daily basis. Yeah, we miss out on the understanding of all of that because it's not really taught to us. It's just assumed we're going to figure it out. We have Miss Savvy R in the house with us, Miss Lisa Atchison. Hope I said that correctly. Let's see. We have M. Williamson, 77, Vic Noyd. Hi there with a flower. And then it's Williamson, 77 says, brother, looks like my leak is fixed. Good deal. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's amazing. So, I was able to help a customer out today with a rather could have been a lot more difficult, I guess, but somehow it ended up working out pretty well, pretty good. It kind of all just came together. Um, so it turned out to be a blessing for all of us, I think. We were able to get the job done, and Brother William was able to get his water back on with no problem. So thank the Lord for that. That is a true blessing. I turned a terrible slab leak into a water line repair, and it ended up being a win-win. And anyone that owns a house, they understand the the serious nature of a slab leak. Those are words you don't want to hear ever. But let's see. Let's move on with this evening and bring this. I'm gonna bring this up over here so you guys can see it. So tonight's going to be a recap of what we were going over, and I really like Dr. Hugh Manuel's question here. He says, "Rev, not to make your life harder, but perhaps do the reading as a separate playlist, and the analysis can use your own reading video like you did with the debunk review. That way, recap of the text is easier for those wanting that side only. A video per chapter, perhaps." Okay, so that'd be a lot of videos. It'd be another 10 videos on, I guess, if I did it that way. So no, actually, no, I was actually thinking what I would rather do, Dr. Hugh Manuel, is so I do have a way that we can kind of go back through each video. We could probably do that all in this evening, without having to necessarily watch all 2 hours of each video and commentating on it. But there is a way to do that, and I'll show you guys. And I don't even know if everybody's even picked up on this yet, but it'll be a nice surprise if you never seen it. Let's see. Better Than Gold 3, that's flat, says, question, do you think the Trinity deception is also from the loosing of Satan and one of his deceiving of the nations narrative? Would be cool to hear your take on it during the stream. Okay, so that's a good question. So I believe you're referring to like the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I believe they're all connected in essence. One or all separate, doesn't matter really. They're all really kind of connected, and as far as we're concerned, I know we have a body and a soul, but we don't get the spirit without God. And so in a sense, there are three parts, I'd say. The body, the spirit, and the soul. And your spirit is when your consciousness comes to life, and that doesn't come to life till you take your first breath. I believe that's how I would answer that. All right, so moving on, we have Mad Pack says, prayers with you, brother. Hope all is well. We will stop and pick you up on the next pass. Absolutely. I appreciate that, Mad Pax. Mad Pax is a very awesome fella. I see him in other chats as well, and he's always has something pleasant to say and encouraging. So I appreciate, I really appreciate commenters and the chat in this community. I mean, you can't really say enough good about you guys. I mean, we all have our differences in one way or the other. You know, we all kind of look at things from a different angle occasionally, and I don't think that that's all an issue. You know, I think what we deal with on a daily basis, you know, we worry about things that we shouldn't worry about. Let's see, Adrian Petra says, will you tell me when you go live on your at your time zone? I always miss lives. So I answered her in that because I didn't want her to miss this if she wanted to catch it. But yeah, so I go live on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I'm in Central Time, so that's going to be 8 p.m. on my time. It'll be 6 p.m. on the West Coast. On the East Coast, it'll be 7 p.m. So there's that. As far as that goes, that's my timeline. And whenever I do my debunk series videos, I'll do them on a Saturday or a Sunday. It just depends on my workload and what all I got going on and need to get done. I do need to get some yard work done. I'm a little behind on some of that. I'm starting to look scrubbish out there. And of course, Dr. Hugh Manuel says boo. That's really funny. And let's see, I had somebody had asked something else, and it was in, let's see, it's hard to catch the lies, but I still enjoy it. All right, so I think there were questions on this video here. I can go back to this. Where are those comments? That's oh, I don't want to see chat replay. All right, I guess it won't let me see the comments that way. Let's see if I can figure this out. All right. Here's a question, I think. I'm really kind of glad that there weren't too many of those, because I can end up talking on forever. So, anyway, so Brenda's Baldwin, she had commented. Oh, I had left a comment on that guy's video. I'm about to go back and do a breakdown of that video as well. One of the comments I left on this guy's channel, it says it's not new, it's original. Also, it's not doctrine, it's just what it is. But to those who would dismiss out of ignorance or fear, it's a true blessing to be born in this little season, because we are, after all the tragic and terrible and horrific events of tribulation. I mean, we live after all the millions of martyred Christians. We don't have to fear any mark of the beast. It's truly the best time to be alive. And as for the weird thing is, like, I guess, yeah, it says as we're the first generation since Adam to have an entirely scripted timeline of our past, present, and future events, whereas no other generation was privileged with such an amazing book like the 611 KJV, I611. We will be judged as all other generations were judged. But the beautiful promise to us is that we will never go through the harshness of the past judgments. It's a true blessing. Like, you don't want these events to come in your time. The issue is, yeah, they are going to try to fake these events. I mean, and they're doing it every day. I mean, I've heard for years the issues going on in the Middle East were all holy wars. You know, it's over religion and this and that. And yeah, it is. But that's because they're indoctrinated into those belief systems. They don't know the truth the way that they're meant to know the truth. That's the only reason they act and behave in those ways. It's no different than any group of people out in the world that whatever limitation of understanding they have, it's going to be due to the limitations of their knowledge, of the things they know about the world around them. Brenda's S. Baldwin had commented, or replied to that. It says, I'm in the same camp as you and am subscribed to your channel, but I'm thinking Satan is trying to replay Revelation 1 one last time, Revelation one last time, so there could be a mark and tribulation before the final battle. What are your thoughts on future generations with what is happening currently in the world? So I think they know that we're going to figure this out, is what I think. I don't think that that the upper echelon, the world powers, that the leaders of our world, so to speak, I think they understand that we're all going to figure this little season out. But more importantly, it's important to understand that in Revelation, we get to see all these events be fulfilled long before we get to Revelation chapter 20. We have a whole 1,000-year gap. There's a gap between the last judgment and the loosing of Satan. And then there's a short period of, like, go out and reclaim as much as you can reclaim, even if it means starting wars and blaming other people for it. You know, we're not, any realistic, normal, sane person wouldn't enter a huge abandoned city full of palaces and say, yeah, let's fight over it. They'd say, well, there's plenty of room for all of us. And let's see what works and what doesn't, but that's not what they did. When it comes to the loosing of Satan, there was a time where very few people understood what was really going on. I believe JT was right when he said that the loosing of Satan was like a whisper. It kind of happens subtly, and it takes a very careful eye to see it. It's why I can say confidently, I've been deceived, and to some degree, I'm still deceived. All of us are. The issues with what they're trying to fake and what they can get away with is that when it comes to the things like the mark of the beast, those people in that day, whether they were warned about it or not, it would have been the first time of hearing about something like this. And so they would have doubted the consequences. Like, whatever, if you just said, hey, you guys, don't get that libelous, don't go down to the temple and give your DNA up or whatever and get this mark placed on your hand or forehead, don't do that, or you're going to end up in the lake of fire, they probably wouldn't believe you, especially once they got hungry enough to feel like they absolutely need this. More importantly, they would have been killing them for not taking it anyways. So we now know about the mark of the beast. And what I mean by that, we not only know about it, we absolutely know the consequences to that. It would be very difficult, I feel like, even with the deceptions and the many layers of deception within our current society and system, I don't see how they can fool an entire country or a global awakening of people into saying, you know what, we've been hanging out with Rev every Tuesday and Thursday night for the last however long, and we're just going to go ahead and get this stamp. I just don't see it happening. I don't see them being able to accomplish certain things that they're trying to accomplish. But what I do think is that they're going to keep on pushing and working towards that end, regardless if they know that they can accomplish it or not. And all of that's done with a purpose, and that purpose is to deceive you. It's to get you to look at this or to get you to look at that. It's kind of like when you come across videos like this. Let's see.
I rolled out there and took the box up and started pulling it up. And it was so heavy, it's just it broke the winch.
And we couldn't get it off the trailer, so we had to leave it on the trailer because it was too heavy. So I was asked by Nick to have a crew go down and unload the container at the other yard.
I got a radio call that from Ron Gillette, the foreman, and he said the men were throwing up and there was something really wrong.
One of them fell down and hit me right in front of my feet. And it was opened up, and there it was. It was a mutilated body. And the more closer I looked at it, it was a human body.
And when I came to work the following day, I saw it myself. I couldn't believe it. And just, just little bitty babies, just all torn pieces. Their heads chopped off, arms, legs, it just makes you sick to see something like that. Well, really, it's just, it makes you want to cry when you see something like that.
On February 4th, 1982, 17,000 aborted fetuses were discovered in a shipping container in LA's San Fernando Valley. The shipping container belonged to Malvin Weisberg, a pathologist and owner of Medical Analytic Laboratories, who was in the process of purchasing the container when he defaulted on the payments, causing it to be repossessed. When employees of the company opened the container, they were overwhelmed by the stench of death and the horror of what lay inside. The rotting, mangled remains of thousands of dead babies lay strewn across open boxes and buckets. The men called the LA County Health Department, who collected the remains and transferred them to the coroner's office where autopsies were performed on 43 of the larger infants. It was found that some of the children had been dead for more than 2 years. Some were as old as 30 weeks. Some still had the tags identifying the doctors who conducted the abortions.
Look, that's crazy. That is insane. And we put up with this mess. I mean, it's really ridiculous. We put up with it because we've been conditioned as Christians to turn the other cheek. And to us, that means to just stand by and stand idle and do nothing. Just let things slide. Just let things keep going, Let someone just take your stuff. Let someone force you to sign this agreement or sign that agreement. Let someone force you to do whatever because you're supposed to just turn the other cheek. It's this whole concept of belief where people are conditioned to think that, I guess plainly put, they'll take two different passages in Scripture and conflate them and combine them into one as if they mean the same thing. The context is often different. And because it's often different, and then you go and you take two of them and you put them together, it creates a different narrative. And that's what they do a lot of times. They don't want you to see stuff like this. Hell, I don't want to see stuff like this. I don't want to watch stuff like that, but there's stuff like that exists. It exists because they don't teach people the truth and they don't, and so because they don't know the truth, they damn sure don't know the way. They believe that what they're doing is getting rid of a clump of cells because that's all we are. Science has taught us that. You're just a clump of cells. You're not living. You don't have life. You're just non-existent. Let's see. Let's see if I can pull something else up. I thought this was amazing. This was really neat.
There's a flash at the moment of conception.
Do you see that? There's a light. The minute the sperm enters the egg, it creates this light. pretty magnificent. It's pretty amazing. The point I'm trying to make is that we know very little about what created us, like what we're made of. We don't know a whole lot realistically. This is all pseudoscience. But this is not. This is whatever is happening here is really happening. Whether we understand it or not is irrelevant. But we're not meant to understand everything. None of us truly willed the integrity and fortitude to be responsible for life, and yet we're told to be fruitful and multiply, and we do on that degree as often as we can. A lot of us, that's the way we want life to be, and bountiful and plentiful. We want it to be that way so that we can always end up on the right side of things. We don't want to be misled. We don't want to be lost, but yet so many people are in this world, even those that have come to Christ, and even those that will even claim to know a thing or two, and even those that will declare with all their heart, I love you, Jesus. We know Scripture tells us there'll be many that come in his name talking about, I mean, I prayed, I called out your name all the time, asked for forgiveness every day, and yet I will spit you out of my mouth as though I never knew you. Those are red letter words in that Bible. And this isn't a red letter edition. My red letter edition's over there on the table, but those are red letter words. Those are Jesus's words. I didn't say that. I didn't make that up. I'm not responsible for the consequences to those that fall into those traps. The same as homosexuality, perversions within this world, the OnlyFans, the pornography, all that junk. We look at it occasionally. We can't help it a lot of times. Can't open up your phone without some garbage popping up in your face. And we're a product of that because we've allowed all this to happen. We allow it to happen when we take them up on their offers. And they say, hey, we'd like to give you this crazy cool offer. Here's the good and the bad that comes with it. Well, who are you to give me the choice to begin with? The same as who am I to give any of you the choice? It's God's place. And what I'm talking about is I might even pull that up, but I was listening to this podcast earlier, and I couldn't help but comment on it. And the guy was talking about it was a rabbi, not a rabbi, a bishop, a Catholic bishop, I believe, or a Christian bishop. I'm not sure. He's a bishop of some sort. I know who he is. I've seen some of his talks, but that's not important. What's important is what he said. And what he was talking about was they asked him what he thinks about turning the other cheek. And he said that as a Christian, we're supposed to turn the other cheek. That means not to engage in any kind of confrontation, such. And he goes on to explain that goes along with being meek. And to be meek means to simply turn the other cheek. And I said, oh, wait a minute. That's not what that means. Yeah, it does mean you're just running your mouth, and I know I can walk away from you, and then we're all good. That's what that means. It doesn't mean let a man break into my house and take all my stuff. It means take him out. You know, people often accuse the God of the Old Testament of being this crazy, unfair, unrighteous God. People don't understand what would make a true loving God tell Moses to have an entire people killed, even their animals, men, women, and children? What would cause a true loving and a righteous God to think like that and say that and declare that? But then turn right around and the next one tell them to take half of them captive. Like, what is righteous about that? Well, it's hard to understand that because we're not really taught the Old Testament. And what I wanted to do with this Breaking Jasher series is I wanted to show you guys that the apocryphal books are just as valuable in lessons learned and understanding when it comes to the Word of God as the Bible. The only separation between Jasher and the Bible is the fact that Jasher is the long content. It's a long form version. In a way, it's kind of condensed because you're not separating it by all the different versions of the beginning. You know, this goes all the way through, all the way to the point, I believe, right after or right before Joshua and Caleb end up going into the promised land and scouting it out. Jasher kind of ends right around that time. It kind of ends right around the time Moses receives the Torah, the first 5 books. And he didn't get all those books on the mountain within those tablets. It wasn't just two tablets. Of course, from God's point of view, just the same as Satan has a point of view, and God's point of view, as we learned in the Old Testament, starting in chapter 1 in Jasher, once we got into those certain points in the later down the series, we understand that God will sometimes allow these things to happen a certain way because it's what's best for everybody. There's nothing really heroic about preserving something that's destined to damnation, no matter what you say or do. Some people just won't change. And that comes along with why this thing is, we're not supposed to take away from it, and change what it says. It's what we have to lean on, because when we start leaning on our own selves and thoughts, we end up becoming too attached to certain things, and next thing you know, it becomes all about us. It's kind of like, it's unreal that a parent would declare her child innocent and a victim after that child has taken another child's life. But the only answer to that is things like racism. And truthfully, that is the case. The issue with that is that if you say that and you're not of the right race, you get chastised or banned or discredited. The issues I have with it are that's not a thing that God ever brings up. However, it does become sort of important later on down the line as we get closer to our generation. What Jasher teaches us ultimately throughout this entire series, if we do end up with 91 episodes of it, what we'll learn is where all these people went biblically, where you would map them out, where you would place them on a map. That channel I posted the other day, with that channel I posted the other day with the Tartaria maps, showing the tribes and stuff. She's talking about this, like there was a movement that took place before Jesus's day and after. And so those maps belong to an after period, after the aftermath of the tribulation. It was during a time when it was necessary to map out the world, because without it, people wouldn't know where anything is. Everything had been moved. No, they get stuck on one side over the other. She won't move. She just makes them crawl over. So they're over there crying about that. But I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but when I post these episodes or on this Bible study, what I'll put in the description a lot of times. Now I have to wait till it's approved or whatever, goes through its process. So after about 12 hours, I'll come back and add the chapters. But what I'll write in the descriptions are this. It says, uncovering the forgotten history before Israel in Egypt, the Bible you were meant to read. In this explosive first episode of Breaking Jasher, the Old Testament, we go line by line through the book of Jasher, just as we did with Revelation. While we hold the King James Version as the proper and superior text, we also recognize that the King James Version is a simplified version, written like a children's book, whereas Jasher is the adult version of the Old Testament. See, Jasher pulls back the veil on pre-Israelite history, exposing the raw, unfiltered, and deeply detailed events leading up to Israel's time in Egypt. One thing I find fascinating about Egypt is the pyramids. I find it really fascinating how this little season topic is jumped on out there, and all of a sudden they've found out something what's beneath the pyramids. And I have no doubt that there's something under those pyramids. But one thing I know that's under there for certain, and this the reason they won't dig and remove the sand and get rid of all of that, is because those pyramids are placed on the tops of tree stumps. And if you dig out all the sand, you'll see that. And they don't want you to see that. So that's why they'll never dig those pyramids out. Now, I saw that on a map, and I think someone posted that map here recently. And I think I might have saved it in one of my Facebook reels that I saved. So I'll try to pull that up at some point. But it's interesting. I seen that on a map, and I can see that what I think is more likely under there now are tree stumps. Now, they were connected to these trees. They were still using their energy and life force all the way up until the days of the flood. So, yeah, I believe that a lot of those pyramids are antediluvian. I believe that they would have been pre-flood, but we're only seeing like a small part of it. We don't see what's up under it. It's a lot bigger. They're a lot bigger than what they show us, I believe. But that's what we would be seeing with those pyramids. It's not exactly what they're telling us, but they're going to always tell us something crazy to go along with whatever crazy we're coming up with, especially in the little season. We were crazy when no one believed the earth was flat. Now suddenly, I think it's like 40% or something like that. The world's population is now considering it, if they don't already believe it. It's amazing because it's not, you can only imagine this really, but I imagine it'd be very difficult over the next few generations for them to keep everything a secret, for them to not really hide everything anymore. I think by then people will know too much. And so I don't think the powers that be are going to let that happen. I think that they're going to push us into this Gog and Magog war. Is what I think is going to happen. In there, it says Jasher pulls back the veil on pre-Israelite history, exposing the raw, unfiltered, and deeply detailed events leading up to Israel's time in Egypt. The truths in this book fill in the gaps, revealing what has been hidden, altered, or outright erased from mainstream narrative. What we learn are things like who this was all in chapter 1. What we learn is that there's a reason the Bible says certain things the way it does, why it recounts the same event multiple times. We learned about the serpent enticing and persuading the woman to eat from the tree of knowledge. I mean, we learned the same stories that we have learned in the Bible. Nothing was different. The only difference becomes there's a little bit more information about Cain. And it tells us that Cain had a sister, and he took his sister to be his wife. And from that, they would create children. These children would be greater and stronger and way more capable than you and me. Their offspring maybe not so much. You know, that as time would go on, would progress, they would draw smaller in stature to a degree, but not all of them, and not for a long time. So you wouldn't have variances from 6 foot to 25 foot the way you would post-flood. Pre-flood, everybody was receiving the same Spirit of God. They were receiving the same atmosphere. And so the people back in that day would have been strong, mighty men, capable of doing amazing stuff. You know, I mean, but the answer lies, as far as evidence goes, lies within the discovery of technology and understanding it. One thing I've understood and learned is that the trees before the flood, the antediluvian trees during this time when God was creating the world, and before Adam and Eve sinned and mankind kind of just took over everything, angels and Nephilim, when there was no sin in the world, I mean, it was a perfect world with just giant trees everywhere. And they would have been massive trees, but from those trees remains is how they built their technologies. They harvest those remains today to give you those technologies. Your silica that's found in Silicon Valley and other places like that, where they harvest this stuff, comes from the remains of these old trees. It's either old trees or dead beings of some sort. But my best guess is that they're trees. What I'm pointing out is the remnants of those trees are gone for the most part. They've been used up. What we have today are not necessarily huge trees, but the tidbits of little remains all around, and just kind of scattered out. And they're harvesting grains of sand and repurposing it into these technologies and making these computer chips and stuff to operate these machines and this technologies that we have today. But we're dealing with grains of sand, basically. They had trees, full trees to utilize. That whole tree would have been, one of these trees would have been enough to supply our generations for, man, we would forget all about this by the time they ran out of power and resources from that one tree. What I'm saying is that they had not only stronger, more capable bodies, they lived longer. They spoke with God. God spoke directly with Enoch. He helped Canaan take over the world, and then Enoch ruled the world, and he helped Methuselah when he fought all these men that were trying to hurt these angels. it's amazing what we learn about the days of Noah from Jasher. Things we don't understand when we get to parts in the New Testament where it says, as it were in the days of Noah. Well, this is as it were in the days of Noah. But you don't get that in the Old Testament of the King James Version. What you get is a children's version. They were really bad and wicked, so God flooded them. Don't do bad and don't do wicked. And as a kid, he brings 10 commandments to them. And that's it. Just follow these 10 commandments, and that's all you got to do. And within minutes, they're failing. So bad that he had to break those 10 commandments because somebody is out there going, well, what if I do this, but I don't do this? Like, what if I do OnlyFans, but I don't actually do penetration? What if I sin a little bit, but not a lot? Okay, all right, fine. The 10 commandments, that ain't good enough. Here's 602 laws to follow for those who want to follow the law. There's a whole bunch of them in there. They're all, you go through Exodus, Leviticus. I mean, it's just laws for days. These laws are designed to help us know how to behave and how to interact with one another when it comes to right and wrong. Those same laws are written on your hearts. You don't need a Bible to tell you that it's best to wash your hands after you use the restroom before you eat your food or touch someone else's food. It doesn't take a 602 laws for you to learn and understand that it's if you're going to use the bathroom, take care of your business in a proper manner, to keep your house clean, or to put on your best dress, or to behave this way or that way. But what a lot of times people will do within that is and that's where a lot of your belief systems will come from, is these laws. Which ones benefit me the most? And that's the ones we're going to pick apart, and those are the ones we're going to cling to, but they'll disregard other ones. I don't agree with that. I don't subscribe to that. That's literally every other doctrine of belief. I mean, that's every other group of people, that it's every church, every gathering of brothers and sisters without a true knowledge and true understanding of truth. We can claim and believe whatever we want, but they don't necessarily make it right or true. And that's one thing I've had to learn the hard way with this, is not everybody has ears to hear and eyes to see. Not everybody can read this and see this the way it's meant to be read and understood. And it's not their fault necessarily. We're all products of the same deception and delusion. Let's see. Let's go back. In episode 1, that was pretty good. I like that one. Actually, that one came out right after I had went on JT's channel, and I think that was between episode 12 and Jasher 1. So this is episode 12 of my Revelation series. I really enjoyed doing that series, and maybe I'll go back and do a review over that as well. But I'd like to get some way to edit all those things to condense them and make them a little bit tighter. But that's essentially what we were kind of going over in Jasher episode 2. I mean 1. In episode 2, as we were reading in Jasher, we got into chapter 2. It talks about the serpent seed. Well, we know a lot about what it says about the serpent seed from Genesis, but one thing this does is it alludes to the idea that the serpent seed could have been Eve and Satan, like truth, like really getting it on and creating a baby called Cain. However, as I was demonstrating, we'll cling to that sometimes and go, oh, yep, see, that's it. That's what that means. And all these different theories and versions of belief will come about. And if we just keep reading, as we learn within that same chapter, is it tells us that Adam was the father in the father seed of Cain. That Adam not only fathered Cain, he fathered Abel and Seth. He fathered all men after him. He was the father of all men. However, that doesn't change what's in his heart. That doesn't change what's in Cain's heart. What's in Cain's heart is of the serpent. It's no different than with the way I was raised. My father was not my biological father. I was adopted. My biological father is a totally different person. Now, he's a good fellow, and I'm blessed and thankful that he is. But let's just say he was the worst of the worst. My dad who raised me is not. I'm not going to take over behaviors from someone I never met and someone I wasn't raised by. But my father that raised me, that's who I'm going to be like. And so I would be like my father. I'd be of my father. That's what we learn from this, is that, yeah, even though Cain rightfully did come from Adam, his heart was from the serpent. I mean, it was, for all intents and purposes, he was all about serving himself. He was a prideful, sinful person. And I have all these descriptions about kind of like what we'll be going over in the lesson. It says, buckle up, this episode will shatter the illusion of mainstream history. As we continue our journey through the book of Jasher, the Rev will expose the origins of deception, the serpent seed versus the woman's seed, and how the manipulation of Scripture has hidden the truth right in front of us. We are living in the little season, the era where Satan, after being loosed from his 1,000-year prison, has corrupted this history, rewritten our past, and erased major world events to keep us blind. But when we see Jasher through an unfiltered lens, the deceptions begin to crumble. What's in this episode? The birth of Seth and the bloodline of righteousness. Why was Seth's birth the key to continuing the woman's seed? Well, we learned that it was important for his seed to continue on because that's where we get Jesus. And without Jesus, we wouldn't know this stuff. We wouldn't know the truth of the way. And we wouldn't have life. We'd be the living dead. The corruption of Enosh's generation. And how did idolatry begin? And why did they create their own gods? They did it for the same reason we do it today. Why they cling to stuff. It's what makes them feel good. You know, if other people are sitting here and telling you, yeah, that's okay, just keep on doing that, whatever it is you're doing, then yeah, that's what that's saying. I mean, that's why you would have. That's why anybody would cling to these things, these idols. I mean, there's really no benefit to it other than self-gratification and validation of others. The first global judgment before the flood. Did you know that the river Gihon destroyed 1/3 of the earth before Noah's time? And I showed that in my moon map video the other night, where the Nile and the Mississippi kind of intersect right there at the north, where the North Pole would be, and yet there's this big area of the world where there's no land, where the other river would have went through. Gihon would have went up that way, and it says, we learned that Gihon destroyed 1/3 of the earth before Noah's time. And then it says the curse of the flood, curse of the on the earth. Why did thorns and famine cover the land? And what does it reveal about the serpent's influence? Well, what this goes back to is what I was mentioning and talking about earlier, where you'll learn in Scripture where it says, where God tells them to kill all the men, women, children, and even their animals, to just totally eliminate those people, but to spare some of these people. Why does he make these, what we think are unrightful decisions? It's because of stuff like this. It says, why did thorns and famine cover the land, and what does it reveal about the serpent's influence? It just goes back to before the flood. God gave them 500 years to go along with that 120 years it took Noah to build the ark. He gave them 500 years to repent, to do right, and he brought plagues upon the earth. He destroyed a lot of it. I mean, he really damaged the earth. I mean, he put these people through some major hell before he flooded everything. But they were a strong, hard-headed, ignorant people. They were determined to beat God. I mean, they really believed that they could defeat God. On some degree. They would have had the mindset of Nimrod, but it would have been that with all of them. Like, they all would have been super crazy strong men. The prophecy of Canaan. How did Canaan know the flood was coming, and what did he record in stone? Canaan, he was the first king of the world before Enoch. He ruled over the whole world. Men, giants, angels, whatever. He ruled over men. He ruled over people. He ruled over the whole world. And then Enoch did too. And that's one thing we don't learn in Genesis, because they kind of look at it like, well, it's not important to you. It shouldn't be anyways, because that's way before your time. And you're not going to get to go through any of that. But for those who, it's in there because of the little season. With the little season hitting us with all these deceptions, if they didn't have this story in here, we wouldn't be able to figure out when we are in time. That's why it's in there. It's not in there because you need to know that Enoch ruled the world. It's in there so you can know that it did happen, even though your history books tell you it didn't. Tell you that there's no way these events could have taken place because our science and our education doesn't allow it. That's why it's in there. But understanding that is what leads a lot of us to Christ. It's what leads a lot of us to the truth. Some people don't need to know all that. I think I was one of them that needed to know it. I asked to know and prayed for it, and it was just in my face. I to a point where I couldn't just ignore it, especially when it comes to the little season, the time that we're in. It's to make sense of all the terrible things that we see and don't see, thankfully, some of it. But even the things we don't see, we shouldn't just put up with it and allow it. Trump is Elvis. All right. Yeah, they do kind of favor a little bit. It's funny. The fall of Cain and the curse of Lamech. The true story of Cain's death. How did Cain die? Well, he was killed by his own sons. Lamech was one of them. Killed Cain. And so that wouldn't have went over with the line of Cain too well. Cain was their triumphant ruler. He was their Adam, so to speak, or their Seth. He was everything to them. But we learned that Cain did die. And so all I'm saying is that the point to that is that there are theories, conspiracy theories that go along with this that will say that Cain is still here. It's kind of like people that believe that John is still here because there's no account of his death. He must still be alive. He's walking among us. And yeah, he may be alive, but he's not, he hasn't been living all this time. I mean, there's just, unless they've been keeping him captive underground somewhere, he's not alive. None of these people are. All these people have been through their judgment. It says the coming of the new earth. How does all of this deception lead to the final return of Christ, where we will live in an eternal, perfect world with no pain, no sorrow, no deception ever again. Everything we'll ever need to know and want to know will be, bam, right there, given to us. Thank you for that, brother. Virtual reality witness. He says the Rev rocks, man. Man, I appreciate that. Let me hit this like button in this heart right here. What a blessing. That's amazing. Virtual reality witness. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for that. But we learn a lot. We learn more about our true nature and our true becomings, like what really led us to all these deceptions. And it wasn't something that just happened overnight. I can assure you that. But it did happen with our time in a lot more rapid time than it took for them. I mean, they had 1,635 years, I believe, something like that. They had 1,600 years to really prepare for their demise. We only get a short season, a little bit of time. After this, there's thousands of years that go by. As we learn and moved on and moved through Jasher, let's see, let's go back to episode 3. These people moved, they traveled, and they expanded, and there are several thousand there's like 4,000 years almost between the time of the flood, like post flood, to the time of Jesus. During that time, we'll see several major events take place where God sort of judges. It's like not really full in judges, but he may judge this city or this town or these people. And we'll see all that. And what I've come to, I guess what I'm trying to say is what I've come to understand from all this is that their judgment's no different than our judgment. I mean, when we're judged, whether we're living or dead. But they have already went through their judgment. And so what I'm saying is, like, it's not like we'll go to the white throne of judgment and we'll see people from the Bible, from all periods within the Bible. Like, we're not going to see the people from before the flood. Those people are the people that would have died and potentially went to heaven or potentially went to hell. Now, they're not necessarily cast into the lake of fire yet. They are in hell or in heaven, wherever they're. Now, we don't know who made it where, but we know some people made it to heaven. We know that Enoch ascended and he goes to live with God and stay and be with God forever. And it's quite possible that he ended up coming back as one of the two witnesses. It's just one of those things where we don't realize how powerful these people were back then and how much they knew and understood about the world around them. We're super deceived. Like, we don't know crap. We're not really capable of doing a whole lot without working together as a whole, as a unity in some degree. They were able to accomplish so much more than us. You know, they weren't cavemen. They weren't dummies who just figured out how to roll around a cart with wagon wheels. I mean, they were a prestigious people. All these people from before the flood. You don't get really any cave people until after the flood. But that's only because what would end up happening is people will end up dwelling in these so-called caves, not because it's the fashion of the day and the way where they want to live. It's the quickest and best opportunity for shelter when you don't have any. And so what they would do after the flood, the same as they would do even after the loosing of Satan, when even like during the scorched earth days, when those times would come and destroy these buildings, we know that people would move into it. I mean, go back to them and probably dwell in them. They didn't carve these caves out. These caves are not carved out. They're the remains of the old buildings that they had lived in once before. And so even the story of cavemen is on one level a falsehood, but also there's some truth in it. There were periods of time where people would dwell in these places. Just it'd be no different than if any one of us was stranded out in the world with nothing, and all of a sudden we saw a cave in the distance. We'd go hunker down in that cave and stay dry. Is what we would do, and we would work in and out of that cave until we built up, some shelter or dwelling outside of that cave. There was no dumb, barbaric people living in caves, but that's one of those things where there's two truths. I mean, where every truth there's two lies. Well, they tell us that lie, and then they tell us that we were cavemen because we came from monkeys. They were just the slightly evolved version of that. It says Enoch's hidden years. Why did he isolate himself before stepping forward as a prophet? Well, we learned that he isolated himself because, man, nobody wanted to leave him alone. Every single day, there was kings from all over the world there seeking his knowledge, seeking wisdom from him. They wanted to know everything. And God revealed it to him. He'd come to him and talk to him. Said, here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to tell him. And so he'd go back and tell them, and they would just absorb that. Where we're at today in the little season is such a blessing. Look, they knew better and still failed. Only one person succeeded. Only one person was found righteous in the whole world. Noah had 3 sons and a wife, and they had wives. This doesn't mean that they also were necessarily righteous. I mean, they could have been the worst of the worst. Doesn't matter. God promised Noah that he would save his kids. And it's a blessing that he did, because most of us wouldn't be here if he hadn't have done that. I mean, plain and simple. But what I'm saying is that everybody failed. Like the whole world was just the extreme opposite of doing right. It was just terrible. It was a terrible time, but people knew and understood better. After the flood, we'll learn that was these people from the lines of Japheth, Shem, and Ham, as they scatter out into the world, they only know what they're taught. None of them know about these times, what we're reading about right here. Only a few people within the world actually understand what's in this book, Jasher. And that was only the people within the line of Shem. These stories were kept sacred and secret and carried on for generations for you and me to be able to receive them in a book form. And it's a blessing that we don't have to necessarily experience these things. We can learn from it by reading it. What we find is that they get misled a lot. Even the line of Shem, they get misled a lot. And all of them do. Everybody does throughout time. Deception is nothing new to Satan. What's new to Satan is trying to fool people with all the evidence right in your face. With these magnificent buildings and structures right slap dab right in your face. But this right in your face. Here you go. Here's everything you need to know. And suddenly it becomes, well, I don't know if I want to believe that. It's like when someone's trying to debunk the little season. So what you're telling me isn't that I'm wrong is that you don't believe it. Because if you believed it, you'd know exactly when you are, and you'd know exactly who you are. I had a rather long conversation with a dear friend of mine. He's a true champion of men in my mind. That's Brother Trey, and I talked his ear off for a long time. And anybody that's had me on the phone knows that I can do that. But I really needed that. I needed that talk. You know, he was there for me, and I appreciate that. I'll read through all this and I'll study all this stuff, and then I'll go out in the world and I'll see things on my phone and on the computer, and I'll see the comments that people leave, and I'll take all that in, and I try to visualize what we're reading about and see how it relates to us today. I mean, the only difference is that we have everything we need to defend off against these lies and deception. To say we're not in the little season when Scripture tells us we are, is to say you don't believe what it says. Instead, you believe what you think, and what you think begins with where you were, like what your foundation was. Like you're going to lean on the things you were taught in school. And that's what leads to all their demise all throughout time. It's what they're taught, what their children are taught. And so to me, that's why this Bible study is important, I guess, is because I know that one day my children will have the opportunity to view it. And I want them to be taught right. Whether they're taught with me at home, which they have gotten that for the most part, but even outside of home, they'll have children. And I want my line to look back and go, I'm glad my ancestor did this for me. We don't need to be just letting them just, go on without the proper knowledge. They get indoctrinated with things that don't help them. And we don't understand how do we fight against that? Like, how do we combat that? People ask me stuff about that, and I'll often respond with things like, well, rip it off like a Band-Aid, shut it down. Well, no, we can't do that because this person over here would suffer, and so would that one. Yeah, they would. I know that. But it's also their children's or family's responsibility to help take care of them and to help them out. The reason we don't want to help each other out is because we're separated by beliefs and other different aspects of life that ultimately are designed to separate us. It's no different than what they were going through in the past. It's why even it's why they'll say in the Bible there that there's nothing new under the sun. What's done once will be done again, and just keep happening. The issue is that it doesn't just keep happening. It happens 3 times. There's a past, present, and future to all of this. The issues are that they'll lean on doom and gloom to convince people that they're living in a different time period. They'll lean on these fears and these other stages of belief, which, as if you consider the nature of it, that can only come from one place, and that's how it serves the interest of certain people. I mean, there'd be no benefit to altering this thing otherwise. It's why you'll see it in movies. They'll put that in movies, like in plain sight, like in the Book of Eli. That dude wanted to find the Bible. He wanted them to go out and find a copy of the Bible because whoever has the Bible has the power to take over the world. What I'm pointing out is that we have the power in us to make this world new or to even change it. We have the power in us, but that can only come from a proper understanding of the truth. It's not going to come from some far off fantastical fantasy event of whatever. It only come from us. And in what I believe, though, honestly, is that what's going to end up happening is before we have a chance to get it to that point, it's either going to get really good for a little while because we're all going to wake up and our grandbabies are going to end up having kids. And those kids are going to grow up in a world that's so good that they'll be just completely deceived. So what is more likely to happen? What's more likely to happen? They're just going to allow us to get that good? I mean, because there's no way that they can just keep doing it, allowing us to just keep waking up to certain things. They won't be able to convince us to do what they're trying to do. They're saying that they're trying to get us to surround this north. In one way or the other, they're going to do that, whether we want to or not. I don't know how they're going to force us all into it. But there's going to be a lot of people that go along with it. I mean, you can see it. You see it every day. I mean, you turn on the YouTube and watch somebody that's a complete heretic talking about God knows what, and they have 14 million subscribers and 200,000 comments. I mean, it's crazy. It's unreal what the people out there that really have no understanding of what we're talking about. I think Connor says it best when he said that in his Sunday sermon. I ended up sleeping late again, and I slept right through that. But in his Sunday sermon, he had said that he said I want to quote him correctly. Well, he says it better than I do anyways. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that I can't remember. I don't know. I just lost what I was about to say. But anyhow, I'll just pick back up where I was. The point is, I guess, to all of that is that, we don't realize what's important, what's not important, and the reason we are afraid to lose all the things that we've created and built in this world is because it takes away from us and our effort. Issues what I have with that is I don't care. I don't care how that makes you feel. I don't care if you get mad at me and upset with me. I don't care if you look at me and say, man, I know that dude and he's crazy. I don't care what they think about me. What I care about is that what I'm doing my part, and what I'm capable of doing is what I'm doing right now. And that's trying to share with you guys as much understanding of truth as I can. And hopefully we'll all get there one day. But whether we do or don't, it's neither here nor there. We're supposed to live every day according to this word, according to these words in this book, according to the understanding that at any moment now, Jesus is gonna knock on that door and say, come on, let's go. What do you mean you don't have your shoes on? We're supposed to live like that. We're not supposed to be living for riches and fame and glory and all this other mess. But a lot of times people get caught up in that, believing that it'll be okay because, one day they can just ask for forgiveness and it'll all be good. They can just continue to live with all their wealth and gains that they got from serving the wrong end. And what that comes to is the separation of the bloodlines, where you got Ham, Shem, and Japheth. What we learned in this episode, we learned a lot about why Shem did the way he did, why Nimrod would become who he becomes. But we learned a lot about the fact that these people didn't know about the certain events that would take place, so they wouldn't have as much reason to believe it would ever happen. We don't have that excuse. I mean, we could look all around us. You can't turn on YouTube today or Facebook or Instagram or TikTok and not see something someone else has found. There's so much evidence out there. We have a book. We have everything we need at our disposal. There's no reason for us to have to go through these events. Yet that's all I'm trying to say to that. But they will continue to try to push that, and they will fake this thing. And that's important to us in the Little Season community, to understand, because we know that we don't have to stress and worry when those times come. There'll need to be witnesses, but not every witness has to participate. And all I'm saying is, if they want to fight Jesus, they can try that by themselves. It says, and right here it goes on. It says, actually, let me go back. I want to see what someone said to me in chat just a minute ago. Let's see if I can find that message. All right. Yeah. Okay. So Salty Sergio did ask me earlier, said, when do I think Jasher was written? I think it was written between, it would have had to be written sometime between the time that Abraham was in the cave to the time all the way up until, up until Moses until they went out into the wilderness. And so it would have been written sometime while they were in Egypt. I believe that it was their version of the Bible. Like, they were allowed to worship their God and to practice their faith in their cultures the way they wanted to when they were in Egypt. The thing about them being in Egypt is the Israelites in Egypt did not teach the youth God's name. Like, they didn't want them blaspheming God. So the best way to keep you from blaspheming God is to not teach you his name. And here we are trying to find it. We want to know what his name is. Well, we find out that his name is Yahuwah or Yahweh. It's essentially your first breath. It's that breath that you take. That's God's name. We can't really pronounce that properly. I mean, that's why it's written as Yahuwah, it's written as Yahweh and all that. But the reason they didn't want them knowing his name is because the Egyptians would make fun of the Israelites and call them Yahoos, which is where you get the term Yahoos or Yahoo from. That's where that comes from. So I don't. No one really knows exactly when, but I would base if I had to guess, it was written right before the 40 years, but it was written like it was their version of the Bible. It'd be no different than if we lived in that time. We had the Book of Jasher, and we did not have the King James Version. We would just study that and live according to that. They lived in Egypt the same way we live in America, in the same way Paul and them live in the UK. They're slaves to their system, to that system. The slavery that they endured was a very different type of slavery than what we think. It wasn't just whips and building pyramids. Those pyramids were already there. Those pyramids were there before the flood. That's antediluvian technology is what that is. It's not nothing that we can reuse. It's useless. It serves no purpose anymore. The only things that do serve purpose and can be repurposed and reused are the buildings that they couldn't destroy. And that's the great Gothic style buildings that we see all over the world today. He couldn't destroy those, or for whatever reason chose not to destroy those, but you just couldn't do it. You could turn them back on if we could figure it out. They'd allow us to go up in there and deal with those buildings the way we want to. We really probably could repurpose those buildings in the proper way. Adrian Petrovic says, just got back. My mama called and I explained Little Season to her. She's adorable and loves the Baptist church, but I just told her about Gog and Magog. See, that's amazing. Actually, I found that more and more people are starting to be more susceptible to this. Like, I talk to a lot of people about this. I mean, I don't just talk to you guys in chat. I talk about this to people all the time, and not at work often, but when I'm at work, if I can talk about it, I will. I just don't talk about it that often at work. But outside of that, I talk about this a lot and to a lot of people, and you'd be surprised at how many people are actually susceptible to this, like are willing to, talk about it and listen. It's pretty amazing. And all I'm saying is that, yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, I think people will be more understanding of this when you have a fair way of explaining it, where like they could see it without going, oh, no millennial kingdom for me. What? We're not trying to wear them out with all that. In episode 5, it says, as the last of the righteous men died, God spared them from the evil to come, but the world refused to listen. Noah and Methuselah stood as the final voices of truth, warning mankind for 120 years that judgment was coming. Judgment. Not just the flood, not just, oh, they're dead and no longer alive. That was their judgment. Just like we will be judged, our judgment won't be like theirs, though. But what if this moment wasn't just about the flood? What if this event set the foundation for a much greater deception, the rewriting of history itself? What we learn about the people after the flood is that there were different sizes of people. Some of these people were gigantic people. They were much taller and stronger than we are today. Let's see, did I draw it in this one? It might have been the next episode where I drew it. Let's see if I can find it in here. It might be the next episode. Oh, here we go. Oh, that's just talking about the paths. All right, so right here where I was talking about these when I was showing the timelines, these people that we were looking at and going over, some of them were like massive, like tall, huge beings, like not like giants, but still 15, 20, 25 feet tall. And then you had little old people like us. Well, they would rule over these little people. And if you wanted these little people to think you're a god, you'll tell them anything. And they'll tell them stuff like they came from outer space. They came from a star, a distant planet. They come from this. They come from that. Well, they didn't all come from those places. They came from Japheth or Ham or Shem. But they would lie and say that they came from this people or that people, or they came from the stars. They come from nebula, whatever, some star galaxy system. That's where you'll get your Sumerian tales, your these stories that seem fantastical. They have to be true though, right? Well, no, not really. It's just where some of them come from. It's how you would rule over people. I mean, you just can put it, the best way to look at this is to imagine you're the one parent, you're the singular mom or dad of all the people in the world right now. Are you going to stop them from, are you going to stop these countries from going to war with each other? Are you going to stop these people from fighting each other, to trying to dominate each other, to acting awful in their ways and hiding things and whatever? No, I mean, you can't. Especially as these families traveled and spread out across the world, they would end up creating their own traditions and their own little customs and ways. But in order to control any of that, you have to control the narrative. I mean, people aren't going to worship you if they don't believe there's a reason to worship you. But if you're way bigger than us and you're the one that tells us what we believe, then yeah, you could believe that these people are gods and fallen angels or whatever. But they're just regular people. Just regular people from a earlier time period, but it's a post-flood time period. But that time period only lasts for about 400 to 600 years. after about 600 or 700 years or so, most everybody is the same size, which is why it becomes an anomaly when people like Goliath come into the picture. By the time people like him come into the picture, it's like, whoa, a giant man. That's crazy. Nobody would. By the time that happens, it's like, man, that's I thought I would live my entire life and never see a giant. Yet there's one trying to take over our whole kingdom. And that little fella, ruddy fella over there named David, he just killed that big old giant. He could have been a Nephilim. He could be in some way genetically linked to the fallen angels. But my best understanding of it is that he just was closer in generations to the flood timeline beginning. So like if you were like a 50th generation, you would be much different in size than someone that's within the third or fourth or fifth generation. Also, not everybody within these generations, as we learn, will shrink in size. Some of them will remain kind of big, and they'll create their own little cities and areas, and that's where we get those things like Gulliver's Travels, where I don't know why I'm looking at that. This is what I wanted to click on. We'll get things like Gulliver's Travels and stuff like that, where you have people finding this little people, and then next thing you know, they find regular people, and then they find big people. It's because you would have separated by size and whatnot. You would have done what was normal for you, and that would have been normal. It wouldn't be normal today. These 4'5" girls who want to date 6'5" guys. That's kind of normal, but it wouldn't be normal for that 4'11" female to be dating a 20-foot tall or 15-foot tall man. It just wouldn't make sense. And so we have to apply a level of logic and reason to some of this to understand it at times. I just kind of read it, and that's what it says to me. Let's see. John Fry says, I've done a lot of work up high. I'm fond of heights, but I put my trust in our Father in heaven when I'm working up high. Yeah, that's how I feel whenever I'm doing anything that I feel like could be dangerous. I trust in the Lord. It's kind of like all this, I get a crazy email talking about what I can and can't say. All right. Yeah. I'm going to talk and say whatever God leads me to say. And it doesn't matter what you say to me or what you want me to say or do. It doesn't matter. I'm not worried about any of that. I'm either here tomorrow or I'm not, but I'm going to live to this day to the best of my ability in the service of the Lord, doing what I believe is correct. He says, John Fry says, what blessing to see people from all over the earth coming to truth through our Father in heaven and King Jesus. Absolutely. Amen to that. Let's see. Miss Wendy's in the house. I didn't see you hop in there. Nice to see you, Miss Wendy. That's Spirit in Truth. She says, big blimping, baby. Big blimping. At work, I got to play the game, fortunately, but I only see about 1 to 3 people. Then it's off to tell the tale. Yep. Yeah, I feel you there, Mad Pax. That's how it is for me. Some customers you can tell are open to it, especially the ones that ask a lot of questions. It's the ones that some of them you don't want to address this to. I mean, it could really hurt you. People will try to hurt you, just because they don't understand where you're coming from. Let's see. Joyful One says, me too, Rev. Making me consider how close we could be. Yeah, I mean, he just doesn't seem like it. It doesn't make sense to me after understanding the little season and the timeline deception to the degree, like JT said, I mean, this community is learning new stuff every day, and they're understanding more and more every day when it comes to the little season and the times we're in. It's a truly magnificent time to be living in, but we're learning so much. But this is ending. It has to come to an end. and we'll have to. There will be a change of events is what's going to take place. The blessing is that we don't get flooded, and we don't get a third of the earth destroyed again by fire. I mean, we just don't have to go through all the tragedies and the tragic events that they went through. Though there will be a judgment. We know that it says that. Well, actually, we'll just go back and look at it. We know in Revelation. I'll make sure I was right. 20, it says that God, that Satan will go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up on the breadth of the earth and compassed the saints about, and the beloved city, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. So, this is the part that keeps me believing that we're still in the little season, because it just doesn't, I just can't wrap my mind around the idea that 8.5 billion people in the world would just willingly choose to do wrong every single day just because, let's just do that. If they knew the truth in the right way, they wouldn't reject it, I don't feel like, is all I'm saying. And that's the issue I have with all these doctrines, all these other versions of Jesus, these other ways of believing and following him. I get where they are coming from, where they'll say we're all worshiping the same Jesus. I can understand what you're saying, but I also don't understand how you can believe that. If your Jesus didn't do what this one did, they're not the same Jesus. It's like, if that door don't open, it never opened, period. You can't say, oh, well, when it opens again, if it's never been opened, then it's not going to open again. It's going to open for the first time. Either the words of Scripture are true, and the 1,000 years ended just as it says, and the Satan was released till after the 1,000 years was fulfilled. If that is if that is true, if that's what it says, then that's what we need to stick with. If it tells us throughout Revelation that Jesus comes back and he's here for 1,000 years. 1,000 years. I don't understand how you could just deny it, is all I'm saying, but there would be people that will. I mean, even up until the very end of this, there will still be people that deny this. How else is he going to deceive all the nations? I mean, it doesn't say every person. It just says every nation. Every group of people will be deceived, which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. It's pretty self-evident. What's going to happen next is a war that's going to take place. They have to push their narrative. If they don't fake these events, then people will read the Bible and they'll learn that the world is not what we've been taught it is. They'll read the Bible and go, well, wait a minute. This map that Rev is showing us actually makes a lot of more sense now. I could see, maybe it isn't completely a circle. Maybe there is a square end to it. Who knows? But what we do know is that this area here is not a ball. But what we learn is that there's a lot more of it, and there would have been more places for these people to travel and move around to. They just don't do it today, and they can't do it today because of whatever is going on in our North Pole right here. Whatever is going on in the center of our world, which is right about, yeah, make sure y'all are seeing what I'm saying. Right about right there. That's what's keeping us from going out here. But it's not just that. It's the powers that be. It's the people that are in charge of us. That's what's going on. People like Nimrod, people that want to be like Nimrod. That's what's going on. Saved by Jesus, 221. You are amazing. No, brother, you are amazing. Thank you for that, sister or brother. I'm not sure exactly, but I appreciate that. I really do. Yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. See, this community is amazing. Really is. But what I'm pointing out is that with this is that in this chapter we went over the rise of Nimrod. And with this in the rise of Nimrod, we learn that even Abraham's own father was willing to give Abraham up almost. He doesn't do it, not yet. We ain't gotten that far into it yet, but I don't think yet. But yeah, he does not, I mean, like even Terah was from the line of Shem. You got Japheth, Ham, Shem. They're all under the authority of Nimrod. And how can you rule over these people that way without them not knowing? They would have to not know exactly what's all going on. Now, they wouldn't have been so deluded that they didn't understand that there was something major happened. The flood had just happened. It ain't like it would be today where everything's grown and everything's been redone. They would have been living in a for real post-apocalyptic world, like a truly devastated earth. And so it wouldn't have been hard to fool them into believing that that these people were from wherever and that they caused all this to happen. Because they would know more about that than whatnot. Oh, yeah, see, the Geneva Bible says, Brenda says, the Geneva Bible says, people, not nations. Yeah, see, all people. So I don't know how that would work. But at the same time, I don't know. What would you do? What would you do if Jesus did reveal himself up there in the north? What if we saw that, and Little Caesar not? I don't know. It'd be really difficult for me to not want to try to go up there. But I don't know if I can. I just don't know if I can until he calls to me and he tries to wake me up, knocks on my door. But yeah, it does. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look at that again. Makes it, and of course I'll, not trying to say I'm going to fact check you, but I am going to go back and read that again, see what it means, if I can understand its precept in that. Spirit of Truth, Miss Wendy says, Jenny, I've done all the stretching, sis. I have one in the calf and one on the muscle that's next to the shin. So either way, it hurts. Long story. Oh man, sorry to hear you're hurting, Miss Wendy. I hope you feel better. Hold on, let me let this mama girl out of her cage. Kendall, she's trapped. No. All right. They tried to run outside. I had to stop them. No, they can't go out there without me watching them. I got to watch them. I don't like them being out there without me watching them. I don't want anything crazy to go on. We got cats in the neighborhood and all that other stuff. You never know with dogs. No matter how well trained they can be, you still got to be mindful. That's just one of those things. Oh, I remember one thing I meant to say earlier. When I was talking about that video I was watching and how he was talking about turning the other cheek, he was saying that as Christians, we're not supposed to judge anyone. And I couldn't help but comment on that. Yeah, for sure. We are supposed to judge everyone. That is no joke. But it is a shame that they have led us to believe that we're not to judge people. But the problem with this is that most people don't know how to judge properly. Like I've said before, most people will judge today based on what they see, appearances and whatnot. And they don't really know the whole story. They don't know what's really going on. In other words, they're not going to be judging righteously in that way. We are to judge, but it's to judge someone's character. We're to judge righteously. We are to look at people and go, I don't like what you're doing, and I don't want any part of that. I don't want my children to be subjected to that. That's what you're supposed to do when it's judging people. It's not necessarily saying you're going to go to hell. We're not condemning people. That's God's place. That's their judgment with God. That has nothing to do with righteous judgment. That's whenever we judge wisely as a serpent and innocent as a dove. It's whenever we're to judge righteously. They didn't understand all that. They didn't care, nor did it matter. Nimrod not only ruled over the world, he was bigger and stronger than everybody, and you didn't want to cross him. If he couldn't get to you, he had an army of men who could, and most people would, just because, I'm not going to cross that line. I'm going to say what you want me to say. I'm going to worship what you want me to worship. I'm going to lean on what you want me to lean on. That's their mentality. But it's a rough time to live in, is all I'm trying to point out. We don't necessarily have that problem. We bring these problems onto ourselves when we allow these people to come to us with these different contracts, these different options. We call it voting for presidents and stuff like that. We're going to have this government system or this government system and this government employee and that government employee. We're going to have all of that. We're going to have all of that. We don't have to deal with what they had to deal with. It's one of these blessings, but it's a lesson to learn from. Let's see. When we realize the truth, we truly have to depend on our Father and King Jesus, because Satan will attack us with lots of fire. Miss Wendy, I really do pray and hope that you're feeling that you feel better, that you're not hurting forever. Let's see. She says we must judge righteously and only the fruit. Exactly. It's the way people behave. That's what we're supposed to judge. Behavior. The problem is we've allowed certain behaviors. They want us to tolerate them. You have to tolerate them or you're not a good Christian. You're not meek. The rise of the rebel king and the war on truth, we go over the line of the bloodline all the way up to Nimrod. And then we explain that through the garments that he had received by his father, Cush, who had gotten them from Ham, who had stolen them from Noah, those garments are what gave him that strength and power to conquer the whole world at that time. And we'll learn as we move on through Jasher that Esau eventually ends up with those garments. In order for there to be an Esau, though, there has to be an Abraham. And in episode, this was 8, right? I believe this was, episode 8, the sign, the plot, and the hidden one, a Little Caesar report. This says a star devours 4 stars, a king plots murder, a father hides the chosen one. This episode is a spiritual thriller, and it connects directly to the themes of hidden truth, bloodline warfare, and the manipulation of destiny, hallmarks of the Little Season deception. What's in this episode? We learn about the celestial prophecy. That's where we learn about, they'll tell us about the stars and in that how like certain people were able to interpret what they meant, like these signs in the sky. And all I'm saying, and the only reason I was pointing that out is that today we'll see stuff like that and not know what it is. And so we rely on people in NASA, in television, in politics, and government to tell us what they are. Oh, it's a satellite that somebody done launched up there. It's doing this or it's doing that. That's what that is. And we just go along with it. Yep. So they're telling us the truth, because why would they lie? Well, they will go through the same things all throughout time. Like, why would they lie? Well, in that case, their case, they would lie because they served Nimrod. I mean, they're not going to go against Nimrod. But not everybody was faithful and true to Nimrod. Not everybody was under his thumb, and not everybody was afraid of him. And that's where you get people like Abraham. He was an important figure in Scripture in our timeline, because he's really what paved the way for King David to exist, and for Solomon to exist, and for baby Jesus to exist. For all these people to exist, this man had to be here first. But he learned a lot. We learned that he spent, 40 years with Noah before he ended up moving and going on about his way in life. For him, a 40-year-old man wouldn't be the same as a 40-year-old Rev over here. It would be a very different 40-year-old man, a much more capable and much stronger, and will probably live a lot longer than me type of 40-year-old. It's a very different 40-year-old. But we see that through their works, through their walk of life, as we read through the Scripture in that way. In episode 10, we went over where it says Abram awakens, Nimrod expands, the nations unite in pride, and God responds. Now that was a pretty good episode, I felt like. Pride was a big thing in that, and that actually went along well with certain things that we had experienced in life so far, that within the Little Caesar community, and how pride, people get overwhelmed with it. Pride leads us to a lot of downfalls. Like even Jason Jack does a pretty nice video where he's talking about pride. And he explains how America, that's the foundation for our culture here, American pride. Where it's why you'll have people that are patriotic and whatnot. People will rule over these people, but it'll be similar to the way it is today. You will have people that serve Nimrod willfully. They want to do it. They grow up hoping for that opportunity. It's no different than today. I mean, if there was a president and become a king of the world, there would be people want to serve that dude. There'd be people that want to wash his feet. There's always going to be, there was always a time, it's always going to be like that. But we learn what we're learning within this episode was what led to the building of the tower and why it had to be destroyed. And that's what ultimately led to all these initial divisions. By people being divided by language, they become divided by culture and creed. And when they become divided by culture and creed, they're now divided in heart and spirit. It all varies on and depends on where your culture relies on. Like, what's the foundation of your belief? It's why I have to question the narrative when it comes to a lot of the things we've been taught, especially about our history. without questioning what we've been taught in our history. We're relying on other people who don't have our best interest in mind to tell us one way or the other. It's why I'll never fall away from the understanding that we're in the little season, no matter what anybody says, unless what they say comes directly from this scripture and I can read it and get the same understanding they did. And that's the reason why I kind of go through this Bible study this way, because I want people to be able to read this book and all of us come to the same understanding. We don't need to be deceived. We don't need to have, oh, he sees it this way, he sees it that way. We're all reading it and coming at it from a different angle. Some of you guys will leave this chat tonight and go and actually read Jasher. Some of you will turn on an audio book. Some of you will wait till the next episode. It's just the way that goes. But it doesn't mean that we don't have the same understanding of it. The only way our understanding is going to be right or wrong, or not the same, I mean, is that somehow or somewhere along the way we create a separate narrative for it. We come up with a different origin and whatnot. And we don't want to do that. With this, we're all coming at it from the same point of origin. Well, these times are way long ago. They done been happened. Long time ago, well over and done with. Now we've moved on to new things, but we're in a new time frame, a new time period. We are in the little season. Now, how much time do we have left? Well, that's open-ended. That's up to all of us, I believe. But I just don't see it. I don't necessarily see it happening within my lifetime, but I can just as well see it happening within my lifetime. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it started tomorrow. If it started coming to an end tomorrow, I would not be surprised. But I wouldn't be surprised if I was on my deathbed and it still hadn't happened. I would just know that at that moment it's going to happen really soon. Like it's more likely my sons won't make it to the same age that I make it to. Is all I'm saying to that. But yeah, so I think we're pretty close to the same. To the end times. Welcome, Miss Trish Clark. Glad to see you made it. See, she's jumped in here. Let's see what she was saying. Where did you go? All right, there she goes. It says, Joyful One. I make some pretty good natural remedies and tinctures. Hit me up on the Telegram. I'll mail you whatever you need. That's really awesome that she does that Miss Trish does that, by the way. There's a lot of people that could benefit from herbal remedies. I'm not sure everybody can, though. But that has nothing to do with the herbal remedy. It has to do with the state of their body now. Whatever damage has been done to it may not always be able to be undone. But that's one of the things. That's one of those lessons that we learn in life. All right, moving on. Let's see. Where was I? Episode 11. I think this was 10. Episode 10. Post-Apocalypse says, Hi, Rev. I've been listening while knitting. I think it will happen in our timeline. I believe it will in our lifetime. I believe it will. I mean, on one hand, I can see it. Like I said, I could see it happening right shortly after I pass on, of old age or whatever. But at the same time, I would not be surprised if it happened like next year. It just, bam, it's here. The end. Let's see, in episode 10 it says, Breaking Jasher, the Shattered World, and the Shadow is Scattered. I really like that title. It was one that just hit me. In chapter 10, damn. In Jasher 10, Jasher is astonishing is an astonishing global reset, a sweeping account of how the world was scattered, reshaped, and renamed after the fall of the Tower of Babel. It reads like a divine census of nations, a heavenly record of human dispersion, culture formation, and geographic dominion. And all that, and what this is really, what we were really hitting on within the the actual lesson part of this series, of this episode, is how these people, these families would divide, and how Noah actually divide, like the world, God divides the world into 4 quarters. But Noah, men, it divided into the 3 sections. The middle, which would be in the north, and then the middle, which would have been like the middle. and then you would have the south, which would have been the outermost area of the world. So they had divided the world into 3 equal 30 like thirds, and each brother had dominion over those thirds. Well, what we're going to find out later on as we progress through Jasher is that when this fella Esau comes in, when this fella Esau comes into the picture, the history of the European people is not exactly what even they've been told, but it's definitely not what we've been told. So their history is not exactly what they think it is. They weren't all like prestigious knights and glamorous people. They were taught all that, but they weren't taught that from Japheth or any of the people from Japheth's line. Japheth's line was taught their ways from Shem's line through Esau and his dominion over them, or conquering of them. But we'll get to that in a later episode, but that's going to be an interesting one to hit and to delve into. It's one of those that it'll help eliminate some of this racial and cultural divide, but it's a necessary thing to go over at some point. So we'll get to it, and we will. But that's what we'll go. That's what basically what we're going over in this episode here in episode 10. Is this? It's just like how the separation of all the families and how that would lead to different ways of belief, different cultures and whatnot. Let's see. Actually, I think that caught us up with the Jasher series. And so, of course, we took a break last week, and I ended last week with Breaking Jasher, the war between, not that one, Debunking the Little Season. That's the one. That's what the Dance of Life podcast with Tudor Alexander. Look, you guys actually left a ton of amazing comments on this, and I do not know why, unless I go big. There it goes. There are the comments. Y'all left a ton of comments on this thing. And I haven't even seen all of these. Beautiful job, brother. Love your humility. Unnecessary one says, we are the rest of the dead, living in everlasting contempt. I don't know if it's everlasting, but we're definitely living in the end times here. But there was like 90 something comments on this video. So what a blessing to have that many people watch that and see that. And I hope that you guys that understand that, yeah, it is 3.5 hours long, but his video was 1 hour and 10 minutes long. And in order for me to give proper commentary to it, I had to, allow him to say every word of his 1 hour and 10 minute video. I didn't want to take away from him, give him a fair chance. I didn't want to chop it up and edit it. It doesn't mean that I don't have it downloaded and I'm going to never edit this. I will eventually edit this video that I did. All of these videos will be edited at some point to kind of cut out some of the noise and the fluff that goes along with it sometimes. But I don't want to, I didn't want to do that with this. And I'm never going to do that to these guys. My goal is not to ruin Tudor's life. I'm not trying to condemn him or call him a bad person at all in any degree. My whole goal with this series that we're doing with Debunking the Little Season is to help these guys understand what we understand. And who knows? We might do one where they end up convincing us, well, shoot, we had it wrong. We're not in the little season. This is the weird new earth and new heaven, or some odd anomaly of life that we're living in outside of Scripture. But It could be. We don't know. We won't know until that moment comes, if that's even possible. But as many of you guys pointed out, he did not debunk the little season. See, Shalom from me, Mel says, I really enjoyed this 3.5 hour tour, LOL. I think you do this well, Rev, and doing a video like this is actually a good way of hashing out many questions. Absolutely, it sure is. One thing I can't stand is when people act so arrogantly and do name calling like Tudor does. That's, the scoffing and the, dummy talk, the duh. Unfortunately, one cannot grasp Satan's little season and grasp the context of it. Within a couple of videos or a couple hours of research, you really have to take your time with it and work through it. I always used to think, how the heck has 2,000 years gone by and nothing has happened? We're like sitting ducks for 2,000 years? It can't be right. Also, wouldn't the time we live in now be the absolute perfect time for deception? We have tele vision, cell phones, internet, news channels, social media, all controlled. Even school and history. They tell you what they want you to hear. They bombard you with it. There is no better time in all of history like we have now for worldwide deception. And unfortunately, not everybody wants to stop and question it. It is sad. Like the Matrix. Not everybody can and wants to be wakened up. They just don't. Most, they're comfortable in their delusion. They've amassed a fortune and a wealth that now they don't need anything else. They got everything they need and everything they want. Welcome, Brother Connor. I see the Cultic Con has joined us. He says, don't forget the like button, everybody. Appreciate that, Brother Connor. Connor is a true champion. I really do hope that we figure out what we need to do to get him monetized and get him going with the YouTube algorithm and whatnot. But regardless of what people say or think, I guess about people, when it comes to certain ones, especially in this community, I like the fruits that he's producing. I love the Sunday sermon, the Sunday Sunday service. It's very beautiful. It's just amazing how he reads this stuff, and he has a really good tone for it. It's a vibe. It's a good vibe. He has a good vibe. People misunderstand good vibes because like I said, we get too judgmental with our eyeballs. We're only seeing, we're not hearing. A lot of people can't see and hear. And some people need to be able to see and hear. It's just the way that goes. So yeah, it is sad when people turn away from the truth because of this understanding or this misunderstanding, and all of that's just the different levels of different things that people go through. Terry Wallace says, I have a question for anyone that can help. What is the earliest known documented claim that we are in the little season? So the earliest thing I found is from 1835. And it's a geographies and histories book, but I don't know who it was. I think it might even have been Jason Jack. I'm not exactly sure. But one of these channels, or somebody posted something where they were going over some manuscripts or like diary inserts, and I'm not sure if they were going over it or if they were just kind of glossing over it. But I picked up on that, and it was talking about in the diary, whatever, it was someone who was currently at that moment in an insane asylum, talking about when Satan was loosed 300 years prior, which have been around the 1500s, which is eerily odd to the time that I kind of figure. I figured it actually was around closer to the 1530s, like 1530, 1536, somewhere in that time frame. That's when I really believe the loosing of Satan actually began. within our calendar as if we were to dating it back from 2025. So to go back, that's as far as back as I've been able to find. But there are other, I'm sure that there are other documents out there but more importantly, we only get what they tell us we can have. I mean, they're just slowly feeding this stuff out to us, And I think a lot of it has to do with even the youth within the elites generations. I mean, you got to consider these young people, they got young people in their families too, that they're raised up in their beliefs and their knowledge and understanding about things. But they have access to YouTube too. So they come across people like JT and Paul and Jason, Jack and myself and Connor. They come across us and go, I may be an elite, but they're telling the truth, and so they end up, that will end up they will be made aware of this stuff too. Cowgirl, come here. Come here. All right, come back in here. You're not ready to go out yet. We're not going out yet. Y'all need to quit trying to get in my lap. But anyhow, that was essentially what all I wanted to go over with this for this evening. And so basically it was a recap. And the next time we do something like this, guys, gals, ladies, gentlemen, leave more questions, offer more, more questions for me to go over. And obviously if I will answer questions as I see them and come across them in chat too as well. I am going to do another debunking episode. That next episode is going to be on Ed Mabry. But it's actually going to be three birds with one stone. What am I saying, stones? 3 birds with one stone. I've watched several of Ed Mabry's Debunking the Little Season videos and his interviews and whatnot, but I actually found one where he's doing a Debunking the Little Season video with the Nephilim Death Squad. And then so there's 2 hosts in that. So that's 3 people. That's 3 people that we'll be able to evaluate during the next Debunking the Little Season episode that we come across. So we'll be debunking the little season debunkers from Nephilim Death Squad and Ed Mabry all in one go. So we'll get them all in one video. I don't have anything against these guys. I don't have any loss for none of them. I love all of my enemies. I want all of my enemies to come to Christ, and I want them all to know the true Christ. I want them all to know when in time we are, so that they can all understand what you and I all understand, that Jesus Christ did keep his word. Jesus is not a liar, and he's not a metaphorical speaker. When he talks in parables, he says, let me give you a parable. It's the same way, it's the same thing as when I say, hey, let me give you an example. I'm giving you an example. Not everything I say is an example. What we went over with Tudor was not an example. There was no metaphors in that. There are metaphors within Scripture, we know that they're there because they're called parables. It's just little examples, little stories to try to help people understand what he's talking about and what he's referring to. The Bible itself is not made to be read as metaphors. It's made to be read as, this is the truth. This is the absolute truth. There are no other truths besides what's in this book. Everything else is a lie. What's in your history books from school is a lie. What's in your science book at school is a lie. What that dude on TV is saying, called at the podium at the White House, that is a lie. What the news people are saying, that is a lie. What most pastors are saying is a lie, whether they know it or believe it or understand it. And I know that hurts feelings to say it like that. But I'm not the reason. I'm not the reason for that. I'm not the cause of that. They need to hear it, because sometimes hearing the hard truths is what wakes people up. And that's the goal with all of this, is for people to wake up and come to Christ and go, yo, I'm glad we're in this time. And praise the Lord, praise Jesus for all that he sacrificed and went through for us, and praise the world and the life that we're going to get to experience whenever we make it into the new heavens and new earth, the new world, where it's all new to us. Whether it's this one and it's all made new again, or destroyed and we walk on a totally different one, it's irrelevant. We're not going to be here. We're going to be there. And that's the blessing. That's the beauty in all of this. Our Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life. And our Jesus is the one that did exactly what he said he was going to do. He's not the one that's out there trying to deceive anybody. He's not the one out there trying to corrupt your mind and to get you to sit here and do mental gymnastics just to figure out what he's trying to tell you. Our Jesus is a just and noble, honorable, perfect, all-loving, caring Jesus. He is a true definition of meek, a meek ruler that came down out of the heavens and defeated all the kings of the earth. And then here we are. All of us want to be kings. And now look at where we're at. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. It could be better. It doesn't have to be. We don't have to allow Satan to deceive us. We can overcome that. And I believe we will. At least many of us will. But there will be many that don't. You know, that's just the nature of it. But every person throughout time has had to experience what they had to experience in order for us to be able to move into this new world. You have to separate the wheat from the tares. That's the point to all of this. We're to judge righteously. We're not to judge to condemn, but to judge righteously. We are to obey the word of God. The 10 Commandments were not destroyed because they're not relevant anymore. They were destroyed because, okay, well, that's not good enough. I'll give you more. It's the same thing with the Bible as it's written. We are now given the word of God on our heart. The reason why he does that is because we have all those laws and everything written in this book. And you can read that and lean on that, especially if you're confused. If you don't know, should I be okay with this or not? Should I allow this or not? That's when we look to these laws. It's whenever we're not confused and we can look at your behavior and we can see how you're talking to me and how you're treating me and how you're treating others. It's when we can look at that and see that with our own eyes and go, yeah, we see you need some lessons. You need to read this book. And, you know, in fact, to help you out, let me tell you what it says. You know, that's the thing. That's the purpose of it. It's for reproof, for correction of others. It's not to condemn them. We're not condemning them. We're just telling them what's going to be their fate if they don't come to the truth. Doesn't matter that they've invested millions in their 45 years of service to the Lord. Doesn't matter. If what you did was fruitless in God's eyes, then it was fruitless in God's eyes. It's just the way that is. And so I appreciate you guys for being here. I appreciate Brother Mad Pax for that. Yeah, salt. Salt. These people are, some people are salty. I guess that's what you're saying there. But I appreciate that. Oh, I see. He says I'm cooking. Pinch of salt. All right. Yeah, that one went right over my head for a moment there. I appreciate that. Well, look, you guys have been awesome and amazing as usual, and chat was popping off. I got a lot to read and go back and lean through. Miss Lisa says, love learning from Jasher Rev. I really appreciate your teaching, man. I appreciate you, Miss Lisa. I appreciate all of y'all for being here. But look, I kind of give you guys an update on what we've been through and what we're going over with this Jasher series. Kind of led y'all through that. We've answered some questions and whatnot. The next time we have one of these, I'm going to see about bringing on some guests. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that with our next intermediate break within our Jasher series. Because like I said, there are 91 chapters. It's going to take me a while
to get through each one of those chapters. So I don't want to just bore you to death with the same type of Bible study every day. All right, we're just going over the next chapter. I could just read it myself if I wanted to. You guys could easily just do that. But so I want to throw in and add in some extra stuff and some things that I kind of want to add to this. So that's why we're doing the Debunking the Little Season series, and I'm doing this right here as an intermediate thing. And the next intermediate thing, like I said, I'll try to bring on a guest or so. Maybe one or two guests, and we'll have a nice little conversation and see how things go from there. But until then, so today is Thursday, so Tuesday next week we'll be picking right back up with, see, what episode are we on? We'll be on episode 11 or 12. Yeah, so we'll be on episode 12, which is actually, we're going to be ahead by number from the chapter. We'll be in, so if you're keeping up with that and reading along with us when we go over this, we'll be on episode 12, but it'll actually be chapter 11. That's where we'll be starting. We may end up in chapter 12. We may even do 11 and 12. Well, I can't do that because then I have to undo my lesson for 13. So either way, we'll get, the numbers don't matter. That's just the episode. But regardless, that's where we'll be at. We'll be in chapter 11 starting next Tuesday when we come back. Like I said, for those that don't know exactly what time we start this live, I started at 8 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's 8 p.m. Central. So you just kind of do the math, depending on if you're East Coast or West Coast, as far as what time that is for you. Until then, you guys have been an amazing audience, amazing chat, and I can't wait to go back and read and see all the comments that I wish I would have been able to read during the live stream. This has been a rather lengthy one, 2.5 hours, but I'm not going to kill you with 3.5 hours like I did with the last one. But hopefully next episode or two, the way I've got my lessons written out and drawn out, it's designed to be around 2 hours. So we should be right around 2 hours. Until then, though, you guys have been awesome and amazing. God bless each and every one of you. You are the best community on the internet, and I truly believe that. And I can't wait till everybody else that we love and care about experiences and understands the same truth and come to the same realization of truth and peace that each and all of us have. At least for me, I found peace, and that's what I'm most thankful for with this community and with this little season revelation, and being able to talk about it and go over it with you guys and learn the things we're learning all together. I will see you guys Tuesday. You guys are amazing. Thank you guys for being here. God bless and take care.
Disaster, a reckoning. You wonder how I got this way. You think I'm someone to be saved, someone to clean up and tame. Oh, some things never change, never change. Oh. You think I would look pretty on your arm once you cover up my bruises and battle scars, but it always ends the same. Can't bear the things I've had to face. Got you crying on your knees in pain. Oh, some things never change, never change. Oh, you'll break your back to make me feel again. Suffocate to make me breathe again. Lose your mind from endless pain. Some things never change, never change. Oh, redemption never came. I stopped asking for forgiveness, cause you should know only fools tread where the angels fear to go, but you keep trying to get too close. Save myself by turning into stone. So save your judgment cause you just don't know. But some things never change, never change. Oh, they say I should feel guilty and change my ways, leaving crumpled bodies in my wake. Swear I didn't mean to make them pray. like a moth to a flame. Oh, some things never